I mean, Bitcoin is hope. We could put a period on it, but I think Bitcoin is transformative. And the idea, right? The idea of a true monetary network is a transformative idea, a very big idea. And I think that people can get worn down in the traditional system. And a lot of times when they come through that portal and their eyes open and they start to see the world differently, it kind of is inspirational. Certainly, you know, I see the economy differently today. I see the world differently today. I have a different mission. I have a mission today that was not on my shoulders before, but you know, we all need a reason to live, right? And I think this is a pretty good reason to live. I mean, it's the definition of hope. I mean, it really is kind of elemental.
What, you know, when you use the term hope, I just put some kind of words on why or maybe not why I see it as hope, but kind of the impact of it being perceived as hope. Why is it you think that it represents hope for some of those people that may not be seeing it the same way as you?
Well, because for a long time, right, and we can discuss when this started. Maybe it's just been forever. The people of the world have been struggling against the political current, right? Struggling against the political current. As you debase the currency, everybody has to fight their way uphill, and it's a struggle. And it got to be bigger starting in 1971, but we had it from World War I, and I guess people, you know, dated back the fall of the Roman Empire, right? When they started debasing the currency, and we plunged in the Dark Ages, right? You can trace a lot of the challenges of mankind to the lack of an effective currency, right? The human condition has struggled from toxicity in the currency, right? If Bitcoin is perfected or engineered monetary energy, Thomas Edison gave us electrical energy, and John D. Rockefeller gave us chemical energy. And the human condition has been dramatically elevated by chemical energy, electrical energy, and the human, by the way, antibiotics, you could think of them, you know, as biological energy. If you think about what's the impact of antibiotics, well, we go from living 50 years in 1900 to living 70 years in 1950. Okay, so did antibiotics matter? Well, if you wanted to live an extra 20 years, it mattered. Does electricity matter? Pretty obvious, right? There's no city on Earth without electricity. There's no skyscraper. Does oil matter? Absolutely. I mean, John D. Rockefeller drove down the cost of energy by a factor of 10,000 on the entire human civilizations based upon oil. You know, if one man did more, right? It's hard to figure out who could have done more than that. So the humans have struggled under toxic, defective monetary energy for thousands of years, right? Gold was defective. It was defective before 1933 when Roosevelt seized it. It's always been defective. It was the least defective. I'm reminded that, well-meaning physicians bled George Washington to death, right? They bled him to death, right? Because blood was toxic, and so they bled him out. And it just makes, and that's why we don't really like politicians, right, to make decisions about blood transfusion. And so if we look through the history of man, elevation of the human condition has always been a function of engineering breakthroughs. You know, when we got fire, that elevated us above the animals. You know, that type of energy, and all of the other breakthroughs were aqueducts channel gravitational energy. right? So channeling of these energies, the chemical energy, the gravitational energy, the electrical energy, they were all really critical. And now, and the human race has struggled under a defective monetary energy. And Bitcoin is the first true perfected monetary energy system that we managed to create. And it's not, people say it's a discovery. It's not quite a discovery, not in my opinion. I think it's an invention. It's like, for example, when we created AC current and we managed to electrify an entire city, right? That the breakthrough wasn't the discovery of electricity. If you got struck by lightning, you discovered electricity. The breakthrough was the engineering, the channeling, and the storage of electrical energy, right? Just like fire. Well, John D. Rockefeller didn't discover fire, and he didn't discover that, napalm burns, right? A lot of people knew, the Greeks knew that napalm burned in Greek fire. He didn't discover it. He stored it and channeled it. And so Bitcoin is the storing and the channeling of clean monetary energy, sterile monetary energy. Why did we die at age 50, right, in 1900? Well, because of infection and antibiotics. When you understand the science of sterilization and you understand infection, then we stop dying of infectious disease. We conquer them. And the human, all of these political systems, all these economic systems throughout the history of the human race, they've been collapsing because of unsterile money, right? Toxic money. And a currency war, we talk about a currency war. When I'm expanding the monetary supply, I'm sucking the oxygen out of the room. I'm sucking the energy out of the currency. But currency is blood. And if I suck the oxygen out of your blood, it's like I'm bleeding you to death. And so the breakthrough is, we find, if I strap you down and I put toxic chemicals in you and administer chemotherapy to a healthy 18-year-old, right? That's the problem, right? We've been administering chemotherapy through the currency to all of these societies to varying degrees, right? And in the Weimar Republic, it was a quick collapse, and in Venezuela, it's an obvious collapse, and in Argentina and Turkey, it's a methodic and pretty progressive collapse, and in the U.S., it's just been a slow toxic drip that now is a rapid toxic drip. And so I would say, come March 2000, right? Imagine you're lying on the table and someone's administering, toxic chemicals into your blood, and you've been going about your business and you didn't realize that it's killing you. And then you realize, and you pull the line out of your arm and you're like, oh, I don't really need this anymore. I can actually go without the toxic chemical treatment. And that's the source of hope, right? It's the breakthrough intellectually to realize that the chemicals weren't making you healthier. It's like the scene in Captain Marvel. You remember, did you see the movie Captain Marvel?
No.
She's the most powerful woman in the universe, and yet she can't quite reach her full potential because they put some kind of governor chip in the back of her neck that keeps her from understanding what she can do. And eventually she pulls the chip out, and then she beats all the bad guys and defeats everybody. When she pulls that chip out and you realize that she's got the power of a neutron star, man, that's the climax of the movie.
Yeah.
You see that over and over again. By the way, the thing that's played out right in front of our face is the modern understanding of diabetes and metabolic disease and the role of sugar. And if you go back 30 years, people talked about the major food groups, and there was no recognition that sugar caused diabetes. And of course, now there's a lot of people would point out, right, that sugar is toxic, and that's the secret to the paleo diet, the keto diet. And if you have type 2 diabetes, right, the obvious thing to do is cut off sugar, right? Just stop eating. And sugar is toxic. It kills you. causes metabolic disease, right? Causes diabetes. What is monetary expansion? It's diabetes to the civilization. You know, by the way, you look at some of those old videos of me, if you go back 10 years, I was 30 pounds heavier. Yep. You know why I was 30 pounds heavier? I didn't understand that sugar is toxic. And at some point it clicked and I figured it out, and I stopped eating or drinking anything with sugar, and I stopped consuming sugar and starch. I lost 30 pounds and I became happy and a lot healthier, a lot happier, cleared my head. And, you know, if you're giving a gift to any individual, by the way, my mother died, you know, from metabolic disease complications from too much sugar, right? I know lots of people around me that I love that died from it. Probably everybody in the world probably knows someone that died of an illness which is driven by metabolic disease because they had too much sugar.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, what gave us that? It was like government said the 4 major food groups jammed that down your throat. Right. And they were the big advocates of the low fat diet, which is the most garbagey thing in the world. So if we were having a discussion of something changing the civilization, I would say, take sugar out of your diet will change the civilization. You'll live 10 years longer. And if we were talking about politics and economics, I'd say, take toxic currency, right? Replace the toxic currency with pure, clean monetary energy, right? It's the same thing. That's why it's so critical spiritually and from a health point of view and to the civilization. And that's why it's a source of hope.
Yeah.